There are some conversations that we must make comfortable in every household and society as a whole. There are also moving stories of perseverance and purpose that not only uplift others, but inspire us all to think and reach higher in hopes of positively affecting someone else. Throughout my journey, I've been fortunate enough to have been a part of some amazing conversations and witnessing wonderful stories of transformation, including my very own. And now I share them with you. Your stories, your narratives, our inspiration. I'm Cory George, and this is One on One. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of One on One. And today we're shining the spotlight on the contributions of LGBTQ people of color in the areas of print and digital media. Joining me today to discuss thoughtful representation are two trailblazers in their respective fields. From Swerv Magazine, we have Jamil Fletcher and the creator and writer of Triangle, which is currently in season 4 and just celebrated its 100th episode and airing on BRTB TV, Mr. Carlos Harris. And so thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you.
The first question, because we're here to talk about how we show up in the media. First question for both of you is, how important is it for us to control how we show up in the media? And I ask that because usually in the past when this has happened and we've shown up, it's because of other writers. It's because of people that are not in the context of our lifestyle, trying to write us into the other lifestyle. So again, the question is, how important is it for us to start to control the narrative of how we're seen in media?
You wanna go first?
Well, I can take that.
Yeah.
I mean, so Swerve, we've been in existence since 2008, and we were really started because there was a void of authentic stories of our community. You know, being at the intersection of being Black and same gender loving or LGBTQ, you know, a lot of times the trueness of your humanity gets lost, whether it be in mainstream African American media or in general market or general population LGBT stuff, which tends to be more white centered. And so that's why we were started to fill that gap and tell those stories and really offer authentic stories from our own narrative because we're so involved in the community. So
Absolutely.
My creative partner, Caesar Williams, he came to me in 2013, and he said, I want to tell stories about people who look like us, love stories, stories about tragedy, about pain, everything that represents the LGBTQ community. And I wrote the script, and the following year, 2014, is when we started to film. And honestly, what started as a 6-episode project, I didn't think that we would get the reaction that we did. It started to air, and we got all this feedback about, you know, people who have been starving for imagery and stories like the ones we were telling. And I took pride in that as a writer and a producer, at the fact that I was a Black gay man telling stories about Black gay men who were in love, who were dealing with family issues of self-acceptance, and we've dealt with pretty much everything, but with a soap opera spin to it.
Right.
So we took the elements of Melrose Place and Dynasty and kind of wrapped it in and made it a modern tale.
But I'm glad you went there because what I see is that we have human issues.
Yeah.
We just happen to be gay,
Yeah.
Black, and male or female, but we have human issues. And so yes, there are certain issues where it's really more specific to our sexualities. But overall, we have issues, you know, such as health and fitness,
sure.
mental health especially,
Yeah.
anything else that makes us human beings first. And I think that when we take the time to pointedly take the intentional effort and say, hey, we're here, so don't put us in a box just to say that you only write us in a story that pertains to a gay storyline.
And that's the thing. We had that question: are we going to showcase a character with HIV, living with HIV? And you know, that was featured, but it wasn't a prominent storyline for us. We wanted to make sure that we told every story, represent every, you know, gay, trans, lesbian person from every walk of life. You know, because we experience different things. You know, so.
And so, Jamil, I want to piggyback off of that because you said the HIV character.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, so do you feel like sometimes people on the outside of us are expecting that character, are expecting that storyline? Because for some people, as soon as they hear gay, they think HIV.
Yeah.
So do you feel that that's one of the expectations that we have to knock down, is that that's not the only story that we have?
Well, I think there's a portion of that that's true, and mainly because the HIV rates within our community are extremely high.
Right.
So we would be remiss not to
Absolutely.
to continue dialogue and provide information around that topic.
Right.
But yes, so there is an expectation that that's included. But as you stated, we are human beings, and so we are a lifestyle publication. We cover everything from
Absolutely.
culture, entertainment, sports, business. We do a marriage announcement page. We talk about what's going on, what's going on in our community from a politics standpoint. So it runs the gamut. Fashion, you name it. And so it's essentially like a version of Ebony, if for lack of a better publication to compare it to. It's like an Ebony, but with a niche that that covers LGBTQ specifically.
Well, and of course I was featured in the magazine.
And you've written for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So my content was centered around male sexual assault victims. But I wrote it from a perspective that says this story is a real story for all men, but how does it adversely affect us specifically? So I do feel like sometimes we do have to target our stories, because not a lot of people are writing or has information that is targeted towards us. So we know us. So we kind of know what we need. And I think that's why it's important for us as black men or people of color to control the narrative, because we know what we need, and that we can inform others. So if you want to write about us, let us tell you what we need from you by doing it ourselves first.
And I think that's one of the issues when people either read Swerv Magazine or watch Triangle or like Pose. They have this internalized victimization to think that something's going to eventually bad happen to a character or in a profile that they read. So it's something that we have to like change, because every story about a black gay man won't end up in tragedy,
And during the break, we talked about the show Pose. I didn't know what it was going to be until it aired, and when it aired, I couldn't stop watching. So I want to ask you guys first, what is your opinion of the importance of the show?
So I think it celebrates the ballroom community for one, but then it also tells a story of what it was like to be same gender loving or being black and LGBT at a key point in time in New York City. And so it celebrates the lives of those people, but also deal with the HIV epidemic and its impact on that group of people. So I think it's an eye-opener. And I love the fact that you had such a large transgender representation. And so you now celebrate and bring awareness to the humanity of people who are transgender, who are also black and living at that intersection. So I think it's great.
And what about you?
Pose to me is beautiful. To me, I see it as a love letter to the community, to the world. I think it was on time. We needed it. We have other web series, but something on a national television network with the money and the backing, and we had trans director, trans writer, the entire cast, extras. Even some of my actors from Triangle were featured on the show. But Pose is such a beautiful, beautiful. I cried every episode. I don't know about you. I cried because it was so much humanity given to these characters, that people hadn't seen. Even some of us haven't seen.
And I tell you, initially I was very skeptical, because I really thought that the storyline was going to be based around some white characters who were not in the ballroom scene, and that the ballroom characters were going to sort of be a backdrop and not flush out their storyline. So I was pleasantly surprised.
But I also feel that there were 2 points that got me, and this was a knowledge fact that I knew. When the character portrayed by Billy Porter was dealing with his partner's HIV, and he made the statement that kind of said that the drugs weren't killing people. It was that the HIV wasn't killing people.
It was a drug.
It was the AZT.
Yeah.
And you know how many people do not know that when people think of what we call the AIDS look, didn't come from HIV.
Right.
It came from AZT, which was a rejected cancer drug.
Yeah.
Right.
And so to have that knowledge put in there for someone who didn't know, someone woke up and realized, wow, I've been walking around with this misinformation. And but not only that, even the ballroom lifestyle, I didn't know. I've I'm from Texas. We didn't have that. So, but what you saw was not just the ballroom scene. You saw why those kids became part of the ballroom scene.
It's
You
family.
saw the the broken homes and how for some that was family for them.
Yeah.
That was their only family. So it wasn't just people prancing down a runway. There was a root to why they joined the house.
Yeah.
And so it told the emotional story that it wasn't just someone trying to join a club.
Yeah.
It was more so they made me feel like I belonged.
And even those house or gay parent sensibilities, I went to a performing arts school in D.C. And I wasn't from a broken home, but I was still accepted in a house, so to speak. Yeah, in a house, and I had a gay mother, and I don't think that type of thing still exists without the ballroom structure, in the everyday how do you say, everyday context. Yeah, it's definitely much needed.
But I do think that when we take a risk, and then B, when we put the right financial resources, we can make beautiful stories. Because sometimes our stories are told from a point of view of we have a limited budget, so the look of it is limited, so the scope of it is limited. But it's almost like a Black Panther. If you gave me $200 million to make a movie, I'm going to make a hell of a movie, right?
Yeah.
But if you gave Tyler Perry $20 million to make Medea, he makes a $20 million movie.
Yeah.
So when people were surprised, it's like, no, if you give us the money, we have the thought and the talent. You don't give us the money.
And there's an audience out there for it. And
so there's an audience.
That's what's even more important is that people were receptive to it. I think a lot of people, I'm curious to see what season 2 looks like, but I was really pleasantly surprised that people really responded effectively. Now it's just a matter of how they spin it and also incorporate us in the marketing, i.e., how about some advertisements in Swerv to help promote Pose? So
there's good stories.
Yeah. Well, the stories are actually great, and and as you said, I'm curious to see how season 2 ends up because it's going to be a time jump. I heard it's going to jump up a few years. But let's talk about those who are making big waves right now, but that inspire me, such as Lena Waithe.
That's the mentor in my head.
When you think of her and you think of the door she's knocking down, what does that bring to mind for you to look at? And not only that, but what does it help you to think about in your own venture?
Well, honestly, Lena gives me hope. And to see her out there doing her thing, creating all these content, all these shows, she's the one that inspired me to want to move to LA, to take what I've learned these last 5 years with web series and take it to movies and TV.
And so what about you?
And I definitely inspiring, but I think what it also points to is that there is an audience out there that is looking, that is receptive, and also welcoming stories of Black people who have various forms of lifestyles, and that is those that are same-gender loving and at that intersection. And so, but she's not telling just those stories.
Absolutely.
She's telling a variety of stories, and they're coming from her, a queer Black woman. So that's even more inspiring. And how receptive people have been to her specifically is what's been encouraging as well.
I always say a good story is a good story.
It is.
We have straight fans of the show, women and men who watch the show. So I think if it's a good story, it's going to hook people, and people want to tune in.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing about when we talked about thinking outside of the box in terms of how people receive our talent. Meaning, when I talked to you out there, I said when I was starting the show, people actually thought I was going to have an LGBTQ based show, and I said, no, my mission is bigger than your vision of me.
Yeah.
My mission is bigger than your vision of me because the way I help people, I'm not helping just one quadrant. But as you said with Lena, she's telling stories, period. I wanted to get to a point where we don't have to say this gay Black woman is telling stories outside the box. She's just a woman telling stories.
Right. And I think the other aspect of that is that her identity offers her a different viewpoint. And it's a viewpoint that has, she's more sensitive to certain things. And so she incorporates much of her identity within much of the product. Even, especially like if you look at Dear White People, there were queer storylines throughout that weren't necessarily featured, but they were just woven throughout the fabric of the story. So it was somewhat incidental, but it was there, it was present.
So we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. So to go back to the ending of our last conversation, so we were talking about um, what we feel is going on now in media that is actually helping to make a change in how we are being seen in media. But I now want to ask you, how do you feel we can keep the momentum going?
You wanna take this first?
I would say just the expansion of the platforms. I mean, now with social media, YouTube, Facebook, you don't need a major studio or a major entity or corporate entity to greenlight something. You can now take it directly to people, to the audience, to people that are interested. And so that offers an opportunity. So that's one thing. And I say just further expand on the stories. Black lesbian women, their stories are not told as much. And it's an audience, or it's a narrative that's just not celebrated within my publication, within other publications, I know print-wise, and even in some screen and TV stuff. And so there's a challenge there. There's an audience there, but there's a challenge there, and I think the market hasn't recognized the value of that demographic and what they bring to the table. And so there's a vast amount of opportunities out there.
For myself as a writer, I get a lot of emails and DMs about how to start and what it takes to become a writer of a successful show. I've always believed in what I've learned over these last 5 years. I give everything, because I don't get any satisfaction out of hoarding information to think, oh, I know something that a person who's just starting out doesn't know. So I think anything, just passing along my knowledge and any information that I can give to young writers or producers that I can feel like that would benefit them.
Well, also, and I think it's important because we talked about the heartache of passion, meaning meaning the investment of time. I always tell people, when you start to invest in your passion and purpose, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to let go?
Yeah.
At least in the beginning, because you may not be able to go out as much. You may be hindered dating for a while, because you have to invest that time until you find your niche and you find your wheelhouse and saying, okay, these, like for example, I'm pretty sure in your first 6 episodes as a project, you had to evolve to say, well, how could I get to episode 100?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't, so maybe I can't do what I did in the first 6 because I have to have an evolution.
Yeah.
And I think the fear is that that for some of us, we're just afraid to start, and we don't know that first step. And you mentioned something very interesting. You said people ask you how to have a successful show.
Yeah.
But you don't know it's successful until you start making a few mess ups. And you say, wow.
And I tell people that all the time. It takes a lot of sacrifice. Well, my first question is, are you passionate? Because if you're not passionate, it's not worth it. And if you're going into it for a monetary gain or popularity gain, the money will come later.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and
Hopefully.
thank God it has for us in terms of our own medium. But yeah, if you go into it for the wrong reasons, I wouldn't encourage it.
But I would say for me and for what I do, I took this show and I said, every conversation that I haven't heard in the mainstream, that's what the show is going to be for us. Every conversation that I wish I had as a kid growing up, either in my family or in my community or in my Black gay community, I'm going to have the conversation. So I think sometimes when we're telling people to control your narrative, I want them to think about, what haven't you seen yet? What haven't you felt connected to that you wish you had seen? And that's where you start to do your work.
What I always say is, where there's a void, there lies an opportunity. And so, follow your instincts and don't be afraid to make mistakes, but work to get better.
Yeah.
And so when you see someone that's doing it the way that you think it should be done, then there's a paradigm that you might be able to follow. So, but you got to take the risk. You got to take the risk.
A lot of homework. I had to teach myself on character development and a lot of technical nuances, because I didn't know anything. I've been writing since I was a kid, but in terms of script format and writing for a 30-minute turned into a 60-minute show, I had to teach myself, and every character is different, so I couldn't speak the same voice. So a lot of what looks easy and glamorous isn't, trust me, a lot of long hours.
Well, and that's the look of success, because success says when you see the product,
Oh yeah,
it looks
polished
pretty.
And
But you don't know the reason why I'm bald is because it looks pretty, or the reason why I'm stressed out.
yeah.
But the product was great. But also, what I feel I'm getting is that although you have a show of your type, and you have Swerv, there can be something else that's similar to what you're doing. It doesn't have to be the same content, but it can be something that says, wow, we can all do this, but have our own spin to all this, and it adds to the whole collective.
Quality supersedes everything.
Yeah.
And the stories are I mean, they're relative to, I mean, even though they may have specific targets or maybe celebrating a same gender loving storyline, it's still an international story
Yeah.
that anyone can relate to. Sure.
But your magic word you said was quality.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, no matter what spectrum you fall in, if you have quality work,
Yes.
I don't care if you're a zookeeper, if you keep that cage in a quality manner, it speaks to
It's true.
it, but it speaks to everybody. So quality speaks to everybody. I think I feel that's why a show such as Pose
Yeah.
was so easily accepted, because of the quality of the content.
Yep.
It wasn't just slapped together and say, here you go, but it was the quality and the thoughtfulness.
Yeah. And stories.
Because
Right.
it was very thoughtful, because they could have told the stories in a very generic manner, but they gave backstories. They gave the depth that a lot of us didn't even know was there. So I think when we concentrate on the quality of our content, no matter who we're trying to reach, we're going to have a bigger impact than we actually expect.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I want to ask you, what do you feel is the best way for us to continue the stride of, I guess, knocking down the doors of perception?
You want to answer that?
I would say just continue telling the stories. I mean, everyone has a role to play in it. You know, I mean, people that have a passion for telling the stories, either through film, books, or any narrative, should tell that story. They should move forward and work to get it done. I mean, based on our work and the work of others, we've shown that there's an audience for it.
Right.
There's some people who are thirsting for, that product, and the platforms are there, whether it be social media, whether it be print, whether it be the internet. I mean, the access is there for them to consume it, and the technology is accessible for you to put it out there. And so go for it.
Yeah, I tell young creators, I'm like, if I can do it, trust me, you can do it. You can do it because, like you said, the access is there. You have the tools. Like web series are now filmed on iPhones, on iPads. YouTube, you can create a YouTube account. So it's definitely there. If any young writers out there, young producers, young creators, you feel like you want to do something and it's in your passion and you wake up in the morning and you think about it, just do it. That's all I can say.
I mean, look at YouTube. I mean, we can
Oh my goodness.
take
We came
something
from
and
YouTube, yeah.
put it on YouTube and throw it out to an audience that's willing and looking to receive it.
And there's always an audience.
Right.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I tell people, just as you said, just do it.
Yeah.
Expect to fail, but expect to learn from that failure. Anticipate some moments where you are going to want to say, screw this,
Yeah.
because it's taking too much out of the life I had before. But then when it becomes to the point where you find your wheelhouse and you get to the point where you're coasting, because I have a routine now, and when the doors start to open and people start to notice that hard work, you're going to realize it pays off. And I think that sometimes we have to impart on the newbies is that if don't put a timetable on the reward.
Yeah, and also to make sure you celebrate yourself and your accomplishments. That's one thing I wasn't doing in the beginning, where we hit season 1 and we were on this like fast track and
Right.
kept pumping out content. And I looked up and I saw all this stuff that we had put out, all these episodes, and I'm like,
Right.
I didn't celebrate it.
Right.
Right. So, and I felt bad about it because I'm a humble person by nature, but it's okay to brag to yourself quietly and say,
Yeah.
I did that. And I think that's the one thing I say with young creators: make sure you always celebrate yourself.
Well, I say that because I was building little milestones. So, because I'm the type of person, I can't wait until the second year. But let's say I'm going to go to medical school. I can't wait 4 years to feel like I've done something. Every semester has to be a goal for me. Meaning, oh wow, I finished this third semester. I'm going out for a drink.
Yeah.
Because I did it. And I think that depends on your personality. But some people need those smaller milestones to say, hey, if I just recorded my first episode, not even edited, be proud of yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Once it's edited, be proud of yourself. But let me add this to the young creators, or well, I'll say the newbies because you could be young and old. Have a support team that's going to love you enough to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
There are times where I will show my certain circle of friends some of these shows. They're like, Cory, what was this?
Yeah.
I'm like, I tried my best, but it didn't work. And it's okay because I could do it again. But you have to be so open with your gift and your passion that you're willing to receive the constructive type of criticism.
Yeah.
But not from everybody, because everybody's not going to give it in the way that you need it, right?
Yeah.
But you know the people that are going to love you enough to say, hey, let me put you off to the side, but also be loving enough to say, hey, I think you did a great job.
Yeah. It's,
You know, yeah.
support is everything.
But for me, I'm my biggest critic. I mean, no one is more critical of my product than
Well, we
I
are,
am.
which can be a downfall at
Absolutely,
times.
absolutely. But I like to compare. You know, I'm willing to compare what my product looks like. You know, when it sits next to an Essence, when it sits
Right.
next to Vogue or something like that, or Oprah, it may not be as thick, but it still has to have similar quality. And I pride myself on that. And thanks to my brother, who's a graphic artist, who does great work. He makes us look like $1 million bucks.
But that's a very excellent point, because if we give ourselves a barometer or a gauge of measurement. So you said Essence Magazine, that's a national magazine. That gives you some type of measuring stick to say, hey, if I want to sit on these shelves someday next to them, my quality, not saying it has to be as thick, but the quality of the content has to be there.
Actually, I think we look better than Essence, but that's a whole other story.
But it all ties back to quality.
Right,
It's
quality.
also the
So I
quality.
think that that's a great thing, because if you're comparing it just to the person who's doing what you're doing, there's no rise in expectations. So I think when you raise your own bar, you're always going to be working until you hit a certain level. But also, as you said, to celebrate when you hit a certain level.
Yeah.
Because one day you're going to realize you've done all the work and everyone else was happy for you but yourself.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, and so with that being said, I want to give you guys the last brief answer to this question. What do you hope people get from each of your entities? What do you hope that they get from that?
I would just say a person who's watching Triangle and our other 5 spinoffs, because now we're a total of 6 shows. Just the beauty of being Black and queer, and just seeing stories about love and relationships and family. Just hope. I think we give hope in the midst of all the craziness.
Well, I want people to see themselves. I want people to see their community in our product. I want them to even see people they know, people they're familiar with. I want them to take it personal when they read the publication and say, ooh, this tells the story of who I am. And so I want them to see themselves in it.
Awesome. So starting with you, how can people find out more about Triangle and how they can watch?
Okay, well, you can watch Triangle on brtvtv.com or watch the first 3 seasons on YouTube. Just type in Triangle Web Series and it'll all pop up.
Awesome.
And you can go to our website, swervmagazine.com, and then we also have a weekly internet show. And that's Swerv Magazine. I mean the Swerv Show, and that's also accessible on our YouTube page, and also on our website. And you can also identify locations around the country where you can find the magazine. We're in 70 cities within 30 states. So.
All right, guys, and so that's all we have for you for this show. But listen, if you want to make sure you stay up to date on any shows that you may have missed, just go to oneononewithcory.com, or be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just look for Cory George Media on YouTube. And as always, take care of yourself as you hope others would, and be just as great to someone else. Until then, God bless.